I think most of you know us, but I'm Lynn Swearingen. This is my wife, Martha. We're from the great state of Iowa, and we're here to talk about Candlelight. Back in December, Les Hansen conned me into, asked me if we would give a little presentation on Candlelight, since we've been collecting it for a few years, and we agreed to do that. I wanted to start out on some history just a little bit before Candlelight was made. I thought it was kind of interesting. Back in the Middle Ages, when they were first making glass, Venice, Italy was the only place that was making glass and virtually had a monopoly on it. And their glass workers were in a powerful guild, and they lived and worked on the island of Verano, and they were virtually almost kept prisoners there. And if anybody left the area, they were followed and told to come back, or they would be killed. They didn't want any neighboring countries, competing in the glass business. And they also wouldn't sell any raw materials to any other countries. And as time went on, they Columbus discovered America, and glass started moving to the Americas. But it really started near Jamestown. They had a small furnace there, and they tried to make glass there in the early 20s. They brought some workers over from the old country, and they started making glass beads to use as money to trade to the Indians. And that didn't last long. The quality of the materials they had just didn't produce nice glass. And they eventually moved farther west and, of course, ended up in the Ohio, Pennsylvania area, and that's where it's pretty much stayed, because they've got the ideal clay and for pottery and everything else, as we all know, in this area. But moving on to Candlelight, Martha and I joined the club in the late 90s, and we didn't know much about it. She had collected candlesticks, and a fellow at an antique shop in St. Louis, we always would stop there if she was traveling with me, and she'd buy a piece or an arm or something. And one time we were there, and he said, "You ought to join the Cambridge Club," and because he says that's what you're collecting. And she didn't know what she was collecting. She just knew it was nice, So anyway, she got the information and wrote to Cambridge, and we got filled out the papers and joined the club, and we went to the convention that year, and met a lot of nice people, and were kind of overwhelmed with all the nice glass. There's, especially when we walked into the show, that was just unbelievable that year. All that blue carpet and all that glass and all that light, it just wiped us out. But the other thing, it about wipes out your pocketbook too if you get too involved in it. But we liked the Candlelight, and we started collecting it. And different ones said, "Well, it's fairly easy to find," and we found some at the start, but it's just gradually gotten harder to find. But on the history of the etch, back in 1937, 38 was about the first evidence they had of any drawings of the Candlelight etching or anything else. And then in 1940, it came out in the catalog, and there was 7. It was one of 7 etchings, and the first, that was the first it was ever in the catalog, and it had I would say, a pretty substantial place in the catalog with 7 pages of Candlelight. And then, of course, as you heard last night from Les, that was going into a pretty tough time probably to sell anything with the war and Hitler's overtaking over in Germany. But anyway, they started it out on a 3400 blank, and they run that through to late 40s, and then they changed and replaced it with a 3900 blank. And at that time, they added a dinner plate and a serving plate. And they used 3 stems. They had a 3114, a 3111, and some in a 31 or a 3776. And let's see, where is it? I think that 3111. That's the stem. Now that's a cut piece, but then they also had the 3711 and the 3776. In the 40s, they also, after 1940, had blanks in the Pristine, Radune, and the Tally-Ho, but limited amount. They didn't have very much in those 3. They had 128 items of Candlelight on the crystal blanks listed in that time span, and 99 listed in the gold encrusted Candlelight. And the gold encrusted is mainly down at this end. As you can see, it's much more outstanding when you see the gold on it. It really looks, impressive. There was she said she didn't want to talk, which is kind of unusual, really. They did have only one color that I'm aware of, and that's Crown Tuscan. I've heard rumors that Rich Bennett's got a red one, but you can't believe anything he says. You deserved that after yesterday. But they had 22 items listed in the gold etched on the Crown Tuscan, and in 1940, and then by 49 it was reduced down to 12. And also in the just regular etched Candlelight, it was in 1949 it was reduced to 81 or 89 pieces, and anything sold after 1954 was on a 3776 stem, and it was only by order. They had nothing in stock, so it was getting close to the end. Now, the only piece of, come down at the other end, the candlestick, the only piece of Candlelight, that's Candlelight, that doesn't have a candle on it is the etched Beaubachets. They were number 19 Beaubachet, and they just didn't have room to put the candle on it, so they just put the etch. We actually, Martha and I both walked by that probably 5 times before we realized it was etched Candlelight. And of course, we bought it. But by then, we thought we pretty much knew about Candlelight. We were getting our collection, getting several items, and we come to the second Smith auction, and we get set down ready for the auction. We looked everything over, and Martha says, "There's a piece of Candlelight here." And I said, "Well, I didn't see any." She said, "I didn't either." So I got the number, and I went up real quick to look, and this one right here was sitting there. And I'd never seen anything like this. Well, we made up our mind we were going to buy it and then figure out what it was later. But we bought it and then asked some questions, did some investigation, and we find out that there isn't a cut Candlelight. So we went ahead and started, of course, looking for cut Candlelight, and during that time, it was hard to find. There just wasn't a lot around. But we went to a show down at Kansas City, and we got into the show. And normally when we go in, we split and go both ways and go through things real fast, and then go back, go through things together. And I meet Martha coming down the aisle, and she's got this big grin on her face, and she's got her hands like this around this sack. And she had 3 of those. So that found them in the back of a rack of dishes. She went through them all, and at the back there was 3 of them. But the cutting was not this, it was this, and we had never seen that pattern yet. So all of a sudden we've learned something else, and they made 2 cuttings, and hold that plate up again. That's the first cutting, and then they made a second cutting. But kind of the story is that one of the glass workers decided to make a set of Candlelight for his daughter's wedding, and that's kind of where this cutting comes from. It's a little more elaborate cutting. I like it, I think, better than the first cutting. But and there is still that complete set exists here in Cambridge. I don't know who it is, but it's definitely here. It wasn't a story. But the 2 different patterns were a shock too. So all of a sudden now we got 3 different things we're looking for. Etched and cut and another cut. But another unusual thing we found was on the sherbet down here on the end. The sherbet in that little wine glass. That sherbet has got the little leaves around the top way too close than any other sherbets we've got in our collection. And we questioned Welker and some others about it, and they said, well, it's handmade. They probably used the pattern off a smaller glass by mistake and just went ahead and did the whole thing and put it in, just sent it out with a batch, because we bought like 5 of those, and that one was different. And the fellow we bought them off of told me, he said, one of them is different. Well, of course, all of us in this room, if it's different, we're going to buy it, no matter what. But that it's just kind of an interesting thing to see that, but you have to remember, they're doing it by hand. That's just the way they do it. But the cut or the Candlelight is it's getting very hard to find now, and we've traveled quite a bit and found some in different places, but we have quite a time getting if we find some, we try to grab it, but the price is also starting to get a little high sometimes too. Yeah, you can talk. Just take that mic.
Okay.
Did you see it?
Can you hear me? Okay. This is the only glass we have found with a flat bottom.
And they say there's
We've been
7.
Looking for a long time.
It's like 7 different ones of those, different sizes. But pick up the Crown Tuscan and kind of show that there isn't a lot of the Crown Tuscan available. I was fortunate enough there's a little story on that one. I got outbid on the internet and then got to the convention that year and talking to Barbara Warwick and found out she's the one that outbid me. I said, "You do that to a friend?" But 2 years later, being the friend she is, she called me and said, I'm ready to sell it. And you want to buy it? I said, I sure do. So we made the deal, and then she brought it to convention, and we picked it up. And so I eventually did get it. And then they made several different things other than the water goblets and the normal run of plates and things. They've got the jug, the Dalton jug. They've got footed decanter, 2-ounce sherry, a cigarette holder. They've got flat tumblers, which you saw one in they're the icers and cocktail shakers. They got the ice bucket and hurricane lamp. And the ice bucket, a couple of years ago, we had a display out here in the big room in one of the windows. And it was, we had a nice display of the cut and the etched Candlelight. And then there was also an ice bucket in there. And that was loaned to us by a friend. And I thought maybe when the show was over, maybe we'd get to keep it. Because I didn't sign a loaner contract or anything on it. But I'm not going to mention who it was or point any fingers, but I will say he is the president of the club. So, the problem was there was more than one person who wanted it. But I did appreciate David letting us put it in our display. But we're going to kind of have Martha hold up these things as we go down through here so you can see a little better if you're sitting in the back. But we've got the sugar and creamer in the golden crusted Candlelight. And they've got this one with the spoons. It's got 2 spoons, which is kind of unusual to have. And then there's our Pride and Joy, that one with the etched Beaubouchers on it. And this is Martha's Pride and Joy. She was smiling the day we bought that one. And of course you saw the ice bucket and the pitcher. Candy dish. Now, of course, we don't have everything, that was made. If you want to see that stuff, you're going to have to go to Bennett's house. But and that was a nice find too. We like that one. The problem with her hurricane lamp is we've got a lot of showcases, but they aren't tall enough. We can't get them in. And actually, when we went to Meredith Corporation to do the filming or the pictures for the the magazine article that they did here a couple of years ago for Cambridge and 2 other glass companies. We took that along, and they really liked it, but it was too tall they couldn't get it in their pictures the way they wanted, so they didn't use it. They used like the nudes and the shorter things, you know. Yeah, I think it was 2 years ago. They who was it called us? I don't remember who it was for sure, but they called us and wondered. Narrated is in Des Moines, Iowa, and they're the ones that published the magazine for Ohio. And they wondered if we could take some stuff up there because there were some other companies taking some things in, and they were hoping that we could get represented well, you know. So they gave us a contact person, and we talked to her, and she said, yeah, bring 2 or 3, 4 pieces. Well, we took like 14 or 15. I said, if they don't want to use them, they don't have to, but they'll be there, you know. And we took mostly colored stuff, and that's what they wanted. And we ended up, I think, it was mostly Cambridge because Candlewick people were there, and it just didn't take good pictures, you know. It was crystal, and it just didn't look good in the pictures. And the nice thing is that they gave us a complete tour of the place. I mean, they really treated us first class. We didn't even have to carry the glass in, but it was kind of interesting, and it was nice that we got a nice article out of it for the club. We got the notoriety, and probably helps some of the bus trips that come through here and stop by. But go on with you showed them your glass. Yeah, that one there. Hold that with that water goblet. And then we've got this piece here. She just picked that up on the way from Iowa. Well, listen here, on the way from Iowa, we found that. She come carrying it out. And of course, the little cordial, those are tough to find. And the etched even is pretty without the gold crusted, but it's a lot more noticeable with the gold encrusted, but it's still dainty and nice. Now, cups are hard to find. They're real hard to find. And if you've seen the Crown Tuscan bowl. And then on this side is the cut Candlelight water goblet. That's my pick of the style. I like that cut the best. I think that's wild looking. Yeah, and that's the 3/16 stem. That one is these are all the second cutting, I guess you'd call it. Those are very, very hard to find. But the little, I guess you'd call it a breakfast bowl or soup bowl. And then the 2-light candle holder. They do quite a bit on the cut Candlelight. They cut the foot, so there's quite a bit of design on the foot of everything in the cut. Now that cutting Martha likes. I like it, but I just like the other better. It's completely different, but and of course that's the one that we showed you has the odd cutting on it. I meant to bring another tall sherbet, but I forgot. But that is kind of our story on the cut and the etched candlelight. If you got any questions, we'll try to answer them. Just remember, my first name's Lynn, but the last name is not Welker. Yeah, one over here.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, the vast majority of that stuff was acid etched. The stuff that you said is cut, is it on specific things like stemware? Was it done earlier, or what was it?
Well, there's a lot of stemware, but I know there's a cut punch bowl somewhere. Ice bucket, of course. I know there's some other pieces, and then this collection that the worker made. Lynn told me that after they got all the plates and the stemware made, then they just made this and that. And that, I mean, there's a lot of other, a lot of other stuff. So as far as beyond the stemware and the plates, mostly what our collection is the different. We've got several different sizes of stemware, and we've got two. All the plates are those like 8-inch or 7.5, whatever they are. But 2 cuttings is all. Just those 2. But and no, got 12 of these, but those we don't have, only 2 of. But that's the thing. I think from what I've heard from Welker is that there was an extensive amount. In fact, he just told me the other day we were talking about it. He said, yeah, there's a whole bunch of extra stuff that they made for this lady, and it's not for sale and it's not for show, and she won't show it to anybody. But he has seen a couple of pieces of it, and he knows it exists. But I think this fellow had a question.
I was curious for you or anyone else in the room. I've been collecting Candlelight for about 10 years now, and I've never seen a dinner plate, so I'm wondering if you or anyone else has.
No, I don't think they made any. I've never seen them. Well, you do. They're like the 9-inch, you mean? And etched. Okay. Well, they made some etched ones then.
After the last presentation that was a couple of years ago in Candlelight, I told my husband that I wanted a couple of representative pieces of Candlelight. So, preferably the cut. So, then right after the convention, we went to an antique show, Depression glass show, and there was etched Candlelight everywhere on that show. Everywhere. I bought a sugar and a creamer. I bought a coffee cup and a saucer. And then I bought a glass like that one, only in etched with that stem.
Mm-hmm.
And then that year for Christmas, he bought me a cut water. But that show had more Candlelight than almost more Candlelight than you've got here. It was unbelievable.
Well, I see no more questions. And by the way, if Bennett raises his hand, ignore him, okay? Well, I thank you folks for putting up with us for 40 minutes.